Chris James is back on the stage, hobbled back onto the stage thanks to his calf injury, and he's going to be joined by Simon Hade, who was formerly of SpaceApe, is now part of one of the biggest apps in the world, Duolingo. So please welcome them both to the stage.
Simon Hade, no, self-dance. Should we hit it in the middle? Sorry, sorry, that was just a little.
One removed as well. Or?
Yeah. I'm sitting on a microphone. Right. Sorry, that was a little riff for someone for people of an older disposition, I think. So this is not the end of your career, Simon, and I haven't got all your friends and family lined up to come and share stories, I'm afraid. But I am going to. That's right. You've got loads of mics. We've got thousands of mics. So I'm going to do a little intro, and then I've got a load of questions for you, and we haven't got much time, so I'm going to try and whip through them. You have had an incredible career. You've been in the games industry as well as the wider tech and entertainment fields. You moved from Skype to Playfish initially, working with the wonderful Mr. Kristen Seeger-Strahler, often of this parish. And that was a time when super distribution was kind of taking off. Then you co-founded SpaceApe, which is an award-winning, innovative mobile game studio. Titles like Samurai Siege, Transformers, Earth Wars, Rival Kingdoms, Clone Valley Customs, and BeatStar. You served about every job there, according to your LinkedIn thing. You had multiple C-level roles. And then ultimately that studio was invested and acquired by Supercell. And then you kind of took some of those later successes, particularly the BeatStar music games, to go on and create Nextbeat, a studio which you then sold to Duolingo, and now, which is where you are as head of new subjects. We're going to go through this in a bit more detail, but just as a quick, while people get in their seats, quick overview. You're also quite a successful angel investor. So there you go. You had a lot of hats. Which part of your career have you enjoyed most? And which didn't you enjoy?
So, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine, yeah.
Thanks for turning up. Appreciate it. I don't know. I launching games. Like the thrill of launching a game that's working, especially when everything's on the line. That's definitely the bit that carries me through. I had a couple of occasions where I was associated with that, but that's it, really. And then picking up all the odd jobs.
CFO was not the favourite job, then?
CFO was not the favourite.
Okay, fine.
Debt financing is not my...
Okay, fine. So let's talk first about SpaceApe. You had some great successes there, some big games, like I said, Samurai Siege, Transformers, Clone Valley, Customs, Rival Kingdoms, all that stuff. Lots of good stuff. So some great successes, I'm sure, a few challenges, or, I don't allow to call them failures over the years. What are the kind of key lessons you learned from that sort of adventure? That was, a good part of your career so far. And if you started it today, would you do it differently? Would you even try and launch a studio like SpaceApe today?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything particularly special about the time today or the environment that means we couldn't do what we did at the start. Like I hear, like there is definitely a take that fundraising and starting a company in 2026 is hard and harder, and I think that's definitely true from the lens of like a 3-year horizon or a 7-year horizon or look back. When maybe the due diligence on a new business was a little bit lighter, shall we say, or it was a bit more common to raise money to like prove a concept to get to the next funding round. Those weren't really options back when we started. So we started with a complete team. And I think today, if you've got a complete team that's made games before, then you have a decent shot at fundraising. And we had an ambition to kind of make a game that would then fund the studio. And so I think those are the two ingredients of pitches that are getting funding today. Yeah. And then we had obviously the X factor of how mobile was going to work and how you execute. And now today it's AI. But yeah, I think the ingredients are still there. It's just It's just a little bit harder than it was 3 years ago or 7 years ago.
Okay, so you wouldn't do it dramatically differently then, necessarily?
I don't think so. I think the fundamentals are like get a team together that's done stuff before and try not to go on an endless fundraising journey. That's the key.
Yeah, that seems to be a challenge for a lot of people. Is you constantly, the sort of C-level are constantly raising funds rather than making games and thinking about business. So, how did the Supercell move come about, and how did that kind of work? You know, overview from a company culture perspective. Obviously, Supercell a very strong way of doing things. Did you kind of adopt Supercellian values, or was it you just operate as a sort of independent thing initially? How did that work?
So it was independent. It was a talent acquisition, similar to Duolingo. It was in the Supercell case, it was about bringing in some diversity in terms of slate, but fundamentally wanting the people. So we had a pretty sizable business at the time, making money, but that really wasn't the rationale. And I think same with Duolingo. The seeds of those transactions are planted years beforehand. So with Space Ape, we kind of shared the same board, even investor makeup. Obviously, when we started aping Clash of Clans, communications weren't as fluid. But like we were very known quantities, and similar with Duo, we were chatting for them for 5 years almost beforehand on swapping notes. And so yeah, in both cases, there were talent acquisitions and building those relationships early. In terms of like adopting their practices, we certainly did adopt the Supercell approach of decentralized teams, a lot of autonomy, taking a lot more risk in the things we worked on. But yeah, that was the crux of it.
Yeah. And you did a lot of different kind of games there. Do you think you tried different genres, right? Which feels less common nowadays. People kind of really drill down. Do you think you stretched too broadly, or were you kind of looking for the next big thing, or you got easily bored, or what was the thinking about skipping around genres a little bit?
Yeah, our product strategy was try to find these territories that weren't dominated in mobile yet, and so we were explicitly going very broad. I think in hindsight, I don't know whether it would have worked for us necessarily, but the winning formula from that period was definitely studio specialty. Yeah. And we had some specialties that we didn't double down on so much. But yeah, that's sort of what the main difference between us and I think companies that sort of started and succeeded in that period was, typically they do one thing, as opposed to 11 things. And so, yeah. You
seem like a man that does a lot of things, in that you've done all these different jobs. That's good. Yeah. And do you think that's right now? Like, is that a problem you think for other studios, not for you, but like where people are trying to innovate when innovation's hard, whereas people sort of evolving and honing seems like right now maybe a better strategy? I mean, again, not for you, not for Supercell, but do you think would you advise people to kind of find a niche and focus in it, or?
I think definitely starting out, it's a good idea to stick with what you know. Yeah. So if the team has experience in a thing, doing more of that thing and evolving incrementally is definitely a good way to go. I do find like the innovation incrementality kind of distinction a little bit arbitrary, because some of like there's a degree of innovation in every game that got successful in the past 10 years. It's just, in some cases, it's user-facing, in some cases, behind the scenes. And so
monetization model or what?
Yeah, I don't, like a regular person wouldn't look at Royal Match and call that innovative, but a puzzle designer would look and see a lot of innovation in there. So I think it's less about figuring out how much risk in terms of innovation you take, and more about, if you've got high conviction on the thing you're making, not worry too much about, is it too novel or is it too incremental? It might change your go-to-market strategy if there's, not a lot of product differentiation from a user point of view. But yeah, I think it's sticking with what you know, because your gut is probably going to be more accurate if you've got experience with it.
No, that's good. I mean, we're seeing it, I say, in Turkey at the moment. Obviously, there's a lot of puzzle game and hyper-casual. But even there's new mechanics coming out all the time. So let's talk about music games. So you've had kind of crazy success with BeatStar. It just felt like it was winning awards. It was kind of smashing it before. And it opened up this whole new world, as well as maybe scratching an itch yourself. I know you're a music fan. And because you described your LinkedIn passion as in the LinkedIn profile as my special passion. So how did that start, getting into those music games and And how big did it get? What was it felt like it got massive from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, it won the prestigious Pocket Gamer.
I mean, there's not much that's higher than that, is there? So.
It doesn't get much bigger than that. But it wasn't my special passion when it started. I kind of got pulled into it when it got kicked off. It sort of, the origin story was really like the game developer's fantasy of like a game jam idea that turned into a product. And luckily, we kind of spent a year or two trying to figure out what the product should be, because at the time there were no arcade lean-in games that made any serious money. And so there's a lot of exploration on metas, and that luckily gave me a couple of years to figure out the music licensing. So I spent a year just trying to get a label locked in, and then another year getting a publisher locked in, and by then the game had figured out what it wanted to be, and the team was locked in on the
Because you
design.
span out like multiple versions. There was like country music and all sorts.
Yeah, we only did one spin out in the end.
Okay. Well, they were planned. Maybe you talked about.
Yeah, that was the plan with Next Beat, because the thinking was the audience is so fragmented with music, it's hard to reach. Kind of like we've got a whole panel on super apps later.
Yeah.
It's a similar sort of problem. If you like one genre of music, it doesn't at all indicate that you're going to like another genre or another artist.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I was a lawyer originally and always sort of got excited about the sort of creative kind of deal-making kind of product legal arbitrage, and that's really what the music genre is all about, just finding a way to work with many different stakeholders.
All the rights and stuff. So let's move it a bit more up to date then. So that span into Next Beat, and then 11 months later, you're part of Duolingo. So how did that happen? What led to, because that's quite a leap. You're starting a music games-focused games publisher or a developer, and then now you're part of a super app, part of Duolingo. How did that happen?
So the vision at the end, so we'd been part of Supercell for 7 or 8 years, and what we realized towards the end of that period was actually we could have a lot more impact kind of helping them scale. Supercell had gone through also a journey of getting to the point where they could scale their teams and that kind of thing. And so we started off with a little trial of picking their sort of smallest game and putting a team against and just trying that, and then we'd pitch another one and
small games are still pretty big.
Small games are still bigger than anything we'd ever done. And so eventually we figured out that was a path that we all wanted to take. But since we were basically putting talent onto their IPs, or in some cases a new game that would be run by them, that left the big question of what do you do with these games, because we were making 60 or 80 million a year. So there was a sizable business that just didn't have any value to them necessarily, because that's a bad weekend on Clash Royale. So that was the genesis of like, well, can we find homes for these games and these teams that maybe weren't excited about moving to Supercell, but really locked in on Transformers or Crime Valley. And so that was really the idea, a big talent acquisition into Supercell, and we spin out these other games. So Next Beat was one of those, and we were raising a VC round, and we had these big plans, and obviously been chatting with the Owl for a long time. Because they're very good at.
He's a chatter, isn't he? Is he around?
He's a chatter, yeah. Hopefully not, but we'll see. But Duolingo is arguably the most successful game in the world, right? And they start off with this sort of edutainment kind of positioning, and eventually really developed sort of deep learning kind of things in there. But there's no one literally on the team that's ever made a game. There's plenty of people that worked in kind of meta systems and badge slapping and gamification, but the core game development was fresh to us. And so they were circling around us because they had this vision of us coming in and taking over the music product and bringing this sort of games DNA into that. And so we were like talking to them about maybe getting investment, maybe just keeping in touch and maybe working with them in some capacity in the future. But yeah, it just got to the point as we're spinning out, and it got harder and harder, and there were more blockers. And they just got more serious and more serious, and
maybe
eventually, eventually we flipped to take it seriously. And then when we got under the hood of it, and the reason a bunch of us are here today is, from the outside, it didn't look like anything that a game developer could get excited about. Like, if you're a PM there's plenty of stuff to get excited about. But if you're in the business of the crafting the soul of a game, it's hard to imagine where you fit. And when we got in the, behind the wall, there was just so many opportunities there, and that was what flipped it for us. It's like, oh, actually, we can do all these things we wanted to do, just in a slightly different way, and
within this massive
organisation.
So, and your focus now, one of the focuses is bringing those game development skills and other game developers into Duolingo. So, have you got any examples that you can talk about of how you're doing that, how your know-how or?
Yeah. So obviously, like the gamification side of apps is it's a bit of a dirty word in game making, because it's like it's not inspirational for your day run-of-the-mill sort of artist game developer. It's exciting if you're working in meta systems and PMing. But what the proposition for us to come in was to take the music course. So Duolingo has languages, and they've got math, chess, and music, and we would take that and make it more fun because we've got some games DNA. What we found, though, when we got in there, though, is their tech structure is quite limiting. It's a native app. Apparently, there's these people called iOS developers and Android developers. I'd never met one before. There's armies of them. And we got in there and we started sort of scratching our head trying to figure out how we can work in this environment. And we just started working in Unity. Because we could prototype, and the thinking was, we'll just figure out what the product is in Unity, and then we'll worry about how to get it into their tech later. And along that journey, we figured out that actually you can, there's a lesser known feature of Unity where you can embed it within native apps. And so that was a big unlock. And as soon as we figured that out, all of a sudden, they opened this fridge of features and ideas and things that had been tried and showed promise, but they just couldn't execute on because it needed 3D or it needed sort of a rapid iteration or game mechanics. And all of a sudden, there was just like this abundance of projects that got unlocked because of the new tech direction. And so that was really, we came in to sort of look after music, but now what we're doing is working down this list of like fun things that could be added to Duolingo that are really important, but just weren't possible or feasible or were just too hard.
So there's a big fridge is open and you're having a snack.
Yeah, we're just snacking at it.
So one of the reasons to hear, and we've got one of the people that's already been attracted is Nicole Hunt, very renowned indie developer. He's been talking about his journey tomorrow. But what is the main pitch you've got for developers? Why should they? You've said obviously it's a massive app. It's an opportunity to work in a very different environment and have a huge audience. But what is the key selling point if I'm a developer or an indie? Or what sort of ops are you looking for?
Well, it's really, I think, about alignment. So right now the games industry is very mature. Big budgets, big businesses, big legacy IPs, and there's maybe fewer opportunities for smaller teams, indie developers to kind of get the traction. Like they're still there. It's certainly possible. I'm constantly amazed by these small teams that do stuff, but on average, it's getting harder for that segment of game developers to sort of like find fulfilling jobs. And at the same time, that's exactly this kind of skill set that Duo wants, because the kind of app ecosystem is being characterized by a lot of like smart PMing, funneling people through to a paywall, and then once someone's paid, leaning on that sunk kind of investment to carry you through the experience. And what Duolingo is doing, and what I see more and more app developers doing, is think about how can we make the core experience as fun as a game, because we're competing against gaming and doom scrolling and that sort of thing. And so it's less about gamification or PMing of the paywall and more about how can we make a core fun experience. So one example that we discovered in the fridge is a thing called Adventures.
I love the fridge.
Yeah, and so Duolingo has this owl. He kind of barks words at you and you kind of get them right or wrong in the lesson. But what the Adventures kind of lesson format is it's an isometric RPG. You're looking at a character.
Tell me this. I've never discovered this.
It's buried because it's one of those things that were like showed promise, but they just couldn't really push it. And a character comes up and says, "Hey, let's go to Paris," and then you can go to the coffee shop or you can go to the ticket seller, and so it's more applying this learning, applying the language learning into basically an RPG. And when you show this feature to game developers, they're like, well, where's the inventory system? Where's the persistence? Could it be like this whole big experience? And the answer to all of that is yes. It's just
go for it.
Yeah, they just haven't had the kind of games DNA to really carry it forward. And so that's an example of the it's literally a game, but it's in the service of learning. But it's like hitting all the boxes that you would if you were making a fun game.
And if people are interested, what do? They just reach out to you?
We're like a plague across PGC.
Okay, right, fair enough.
But yeah, on LinkedIn or there's a talk by Osman at 12, which is really good. There he is, and about all the opening the windows on a peek into all of the A/B testing methodology and the tooling and the streaks and that sort of thing. And there's a talk tomorrow by a developer about how we sort of hacked the Unity native code kind of problem.
Excellent. So there's plenty of opportunities. I have one last question. Does anybody have a question? Because I always give people. Does anybody have a question for Simon? This man is there is a man there. Gaming legend. Can we get a mic for the gentleman here with a pen in his hand? You can actually. We've got about 1,000 mics here. You can use one of those. That's fine. Use the pen. Yeah. No. This is a great opportunity to ask a guy that's done it all, been there, done that.
First things first, my Duolingo streak is over 2,000.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah, every day I just play the chess level now. I'm kind of cheating. But anyway, I'm wondering, is Duolingo planning to do any cool on-device AI, perhaps, AI at runtime, to make the lessons more challenging, I guess? You know, generate them on the fly rather than create them in advance.
Yeah, so I don't know about necessarily on the fly. There are a bunch of features within the app that are quite fluid. So the video calling is obviously like an AI interaction where you're talking to an avatar. We really think about like the end user experience and what serves that. And then the production kind of tools are kind of like a less important thing. The goal right now is to make the free experience more immersive and engaging, and so more adaptability and more flexibility and just more fun is definitely the direction. How we do it's a mixture. Certainly content generation has changed. The company as itself is communicated before. They're very like. They're AI forward, but fundamentally they're very committed to people and handcrafting this content. So I would say we're maybe less AI sort of focused than you might think, because it's really about the craft of those experiences. But yeah, certainly where it makes sense, like video calling is a classic feature that just wouldn't exist but for AI backend.
I have one more very, very small thing, and then we've got to go, so I'm being given the evil eye. You did tell me when we were talking for this that there's some interesting data points about how many people have done a 365-day streak. The engagement levels on Duolingo are off the charts.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, I just remembered that. I was about to
freaking one talking point I'd remembered. So one of the obviously, there's the creative itch that you scratch as a developer, making fun experiences. You've got the kind of different objective where you're trying to, help people learn and better themselves, that sort of thing. But as a platform to reach people, it's insane. So there's 50 million daily active users, which that's a big game.
Yeah, that's a big game.
But one of the leading metrics that a bunch of developers now look at is like, how can we get people coming back every day for 7 days, for example? If you've got
done 2,000, this guy, so yeah.
Yeah, if you can get 5% of your DAU coming back 7 days in a row, you're popping champagne.
Yeah.
10%, you're basically, on that chart. And there's a ridiculous stat that I found out after I joined that there's. Of those 50 million, more than 10 million have a 365-day consecutive streak. Which, like, when I heard it, I got them to run the query because that can't be right. And it's just this ridiculous.
Day 365 retention.
Yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
So the goal is less about getting people coming back. It's not about getting people to spend. It's about getting people that are already locked in and want more. Giving them more delightful, engaging experiences. So that's the key. Okay, so brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. If you want to get engaged, there's lots of opportunities. Big round of applause, please, for Simon. Thank you very much.